It's episode 5 of Demo Disc on Higher Plane Games, and I've got a collection of demos that I have been thoroughly enjoying, and almost everything on this list has stayed on my wish list. So without further ado, let's dive into the first game, Voidling Bound. A fantastic mashup that answers the question, what happens if you cross Spore with an action roguelike in a 3D platforming setting with some No Man's Sky exploration? It's a proper melting pot of ideas, and I absolutely loved this. You play as a character who kind of has this weird conical flask jug as a head, and you neuro-link into different species that you're trying to save from extinction. There's this big poisonous blight that is taking over and destroying different ecosystems. And so with your gun, you'll be busy trying to blast that out of the way, cleaning the environment as you go. But you'll do this by neurolinking into these different species and becoming them. And then each species has its own unique abilities and its own unique skill tree, because as you collect DNA, as you kill other enemies and all the different like poisonous evil blight that's taking over the world, you will then take your species and evolve them into different versions of themselves. So in the demo, the cute little bird that I was playing as could evolve into a fire-breathing, lava-spewing version of itself, or a more nature-focused attack that could then do what potentially looked like potentially poison damage back. But then in its own skill tree, it had a secondary ability and an ultimate ability on top of its melee and ranged attacks that were base standard. And so as you kind of panned out on the camera, it looked like the skill tree could go quite a way. And so if that's for every single species that you can play with, and they've got their own skill tree, customization and fun to be had. The moment-to-moment gameplay was superb as well. Battles were fast and furious, but also you had this stamina meter, which meant that you couldn't just go in all guns blazing, and so you'd need to work out when to dodge and recharge some of your stamina to then either fire your gun attacks or to build up your melee attacks to kind of get in, scratch about, and then dive back out again. Really good fun. Absolutely a day one buy for me. Cannot get enough of Voidling Bound. The next game is also a day one buy for me. It's 13Z The Zodiac Trials, and it is a action roguelike in a 3D setting that's fast, frantic and furious, but again has loads of customization and upgrades that you can then spew off into. The 12 Zodiac gods are busy trying to put you through different trials for you to become the 13th Zodiac. And so each one has its own unique battle parameters, but then you can siphon off some of their energy and some of their specialist skills to then build out your own character as you go. As you go through the different 3D environments, you then get to choose different paths that then unlock different upgrades, and some of those then have choices inside too. So not only was the gameplay fast, fluid and responsive, but also the amount of choice that you had just per run and then in your overarching upgrade trees as well were vast, and it just played exceptionally well. Nothing massively new here, but excellently themed, beautifully stylized, and with a fantastic gameplay loop that just responded to everything that I wanted it to do. So yeah, this is one of those where it's not doing anything new, but the theming and the way how it's done really makes up like to an immediate day one buy for me. With 2 action heavy games straight out of the way, we're into Hollow Home next, which made its mark on me for a really unique game that I've just not really come across with this style and format and theming before. You play as a teenager who has been left at home at the moment the Russian-Ukraine war starts. And so your mum's trying to get you, at least in the part of the demo that you get to play, but you're going to need to fend for yourself basically and start building up a brigade and making your own decisions along with your local neighbours, community members, best friends. You was planning to play truant from school in the prologue, and this then builds up some of your character traits and action points and kind of resolve mentally for how you can survive day to day as the war is coming towards you. Now, your actions in the dialogue tree are determined by how many action points you've got left before you need to go to bed at the end of the day and reset things, or it's by the 8 traits that you've got, such as athleticism or sympathy or intelligence. They all unlock or block certain dialogue tree paths, but you can only invest in certain ones as you level up through XP, or the very first choice that you do is decide what type of clothes you're going to put on. And then I put on the tracksuit, and so it gave me athleticism, but it made me stupider. So I was like, oh well, never mind, or less observant, should I say. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was really setting the scene, and the demo is perfectly pitched in a way that really wets the whistle for the bigger story arc to come. A real surprise, immediate add to my wish list. This will be a day one buy for me too. Another day one buy for me, this video is very expensive, is Rhythm Animal Café. I am loving the resurgence of the rhythm action game where it's like call and response. So you hear a pattern and then you repeat it. We've had a couple of these come out recently, and this looks like another fantastic one. It's using the keyboard and different buttons on it depending on the mini games that there are in. There are 3 in the demo. 2 revolved around pressing the space bar to certain rhythms, and the 3rd one was around pressing A and D between whether your boss was telling you off for, or telling you to use your computer or print something. And so I quite like the illusion, or the alluding to, that there's going to be loads of different types of mini games that aren't just press a button in response to things. There's other stuff going on too. Excellent graphics, funny comedic overtones of everything that's going on, and the rhythm was bang on to the point with no lag or issues there. So an immediate add to the wish list and another day one buy, because I can't say no to a rhythm game. Next up is Goblin Sushi, and the premise of this game is that you're trying to run a sushi bar and you need to keep paying rent as the rent gets higher and higher and higher each week that you stay in the game. But as you continue on, you then get upgrades, which then means that you can get more expensive sushi that you can then try and wrap into rolls and then serve to customers. The key with this game, and it took me a minute or two to then go, aha, is that everything starts on one end of the sushi bar, and if a customer comes in and wants the same type of sushi, it will steal it from the customer that you've built it for, who might be further on down the bar. And so they'll be getting more and more impatient. And so as they get impatient and their meter runs out, you then lose money, as well as just generally your prestige in keeping open your Goblin Sushi bar. So you need to time when to take away plates and clean them so that the next customer doesn't come in and whip away what you've got for someone who might be running low on patience further down the bar. This was fun, but the difficulty ramped up very quickly because I kept getting that very specific mechanic wrong. But I think once I get used to that, I'd be in the flow of things. And it wasn't just sushi, I was starting to order drinks and things like that too. And so, yeah, this gives me good WiiWare style get vibes, but in a goblin setting. Definitely onto my wish list. Very intrigued by it. Talking of Wii, there used to be a Wii series that was all about doing surgery with your Wii nunchucks and stuff like that. And this is exactly what Cutting Edge Roots of Mutation reminded me of. This is essentially those trauma surgery games, but in a furry visual novel sci-fi dystopian horror future. If that doesn't sell you into the game, I don't know what will. The idea is that you are playing as a doctor who's got this weird transplant mech eye that is supposed to be able to enhance people's ability to complete surgeries. But in the prologue that I played, it goes absolutely nuts and causes you problems, and actually you nearly kill someone and you kind of get pulled away. It's all very Grey's Anatomy but furry style. What I really liked about this was that the way how you played the different surgeries were all about like trying to get the scalpel and cut in the right incisions and then use the sutures to pull things up properly. You needed to keep the vitals above a certain number, and so you're busy injecting vials of like calming medicine to keep them calm. There was lots going on, and looking at the UI, it looks like there's going to be tons of things that you can do, and the story weren't bad either. So cutting edge roots of mutation, proper left field game and a really strange mashup. Loved it though, and definitely a day one pickup for me. This next game is busy touting itself for a Kickstarter, and it's called Ungaland. It's a 3D platformer, very much of the 90s ilk. The soundtrack instantly made me think of Crash Bandicoot, and I couldn't help it. But the whole point of this is that it's around cavemen, historical, primeval style settings with lots of Aboriginal undertones that are running throughout. You're charged with collecting certain types of mystical seeds, very much like sacrifice to the gods if you don't. So you've got to make sure you're good, because everyone goes into these caves and never returns. And so for you, this involves lots of jumping around from different platforms that would quite happily fall away under your feet into lava if you do, dealing with different skeletons that are coming back to life, and using not just melee attacks, but turning your boomerang into like a ranged gunshot. And so you'll be trying to hit various different targets with it, for example, and then using it as a way to parry and return back fire for anything that's trying to melee attack you. I did find that because this is a prototype, there's a lot of imprecisions, which I'd expect to be finessed in a fuller experience. But this is very much a, if you like the look of this, back us on Kickstarter and see how we go. And so from that perspective, Ungaland, I think, is quite successful because it's got all the fundamentals here to make a good classic 1999-2001 era 3D platformer. So yeah, check it out on Kickstarter. I think it's launching quite soon. My favourite pun title of this list is Huedini, Budums. And this is a top-down style arena combat game that plays with the fact that every enemy in this game and all of your attacks are 3 colours, and they're related to different gems that you're trying to then hit and kick around the screen until they break and give you a skill that you can then upgrade your character with. And so if you need to cross like the weird liquid waters and they're all green, you need to select the green icon in your arsenal to turn you green, and then you can suck up that. But then you can run into all of the green enemies and they'll explode and die. Or if you want to hit the red crystal, you need to flip to red to hit that, but then immediately go back to blue if you want to then hit the blue item afterwards. As you clear each room, you're then given a power-up, which then allows you to try and mutate and expand your arsenal of attacks and chain attacks, but they require a certain amount of crystals or hits in a certain colour for them to then be generated. So it was really quite an interesting mix of things. This was much more fast-paced, or faster-paced, than I thought it was going to. And although the screen was quite dark quite often, I really enjoyed the actual moment-to-moment gameplay of Huedini. And so this has gone right onto my wish list, and I'll be keeping a very beady eye on it. Is it really a week in gaming if there's not been a Suika-like that's being released? Well, this is PancitoMerge, and it's trying to do something slightly different by placing the Suika puzzle style, which if you don't know is where you're merging 2 of the same thing together, or multiples of the same thing together, to go up a chain to make bigger and better and more powerful and higher scoring things. You do this inside a bakery, and the idea is that every 5 moves, a customer arrives and demands to be sold one of your bits of bakery, and so you need to kind of make sure that you then get the right piece of bakery sold to them within a certain moveset before they then wander off and you don't get any points. This was a cool spin on what I feel like is already a far too vastly populated subgenre of puzzle game, because this adds something different and an additional element into the mix, which is what I think you need to do now with this genre to make it worth your while to go into it. Love the aesthetic. I also quite like the fact that there is not much bounce actually with the items as they fall down, and they just kind of squidge a little bit and then topple over, so it made actually the aiming of things really quite specific and accurate. And so yeah, this one's gone into my wish list. I thought it was quite cute. This week's Zen game comes from Dream Garden because you are literally creating Zen gardens either on a table or in your living room or in a central courtyard inside a square house. There's lots of different ones in the full game, but in the demo it was about putting little tiny Zen gardens together on your table. There is something so satisfying about this, particularly when you can start to press a mouse button and then different sand rake styles and patterns start to appear very slowly, and I was like, ooh, yes please, bring it. But there's loads of different objects that you can place down, different foliage, and even butterflies and koi carp fish and little starfish floating in rivers that you can carve into the Zen garden that you make. Even better, and I really like the menu options for this, you press and hold space and then use the mouse to kind of on a radial wheel just move to where you want it to go and then let go of space and then you're into a new menu. I thought that was quite cool. But inside this is a visual settings menu which lets you turn on different weather effects, seasonal effects, and a day-night cycle as well. And so you could have rain in winter where there's snow everywhere at night, but then change that to day and have it sunshine but it's still icy, so it's got that kind of really glistening frost to it. Moving forward to a thawed out spring, summer or autumn, and all of the foliage then starts to change and be less lushy green and starting to turn into oranger hues. Really well done. And so yeah, quite enjoyed my time with Dream Garden. Straight onto my wish list, that one. Next up is Absym, and this is slightly Cthulhu-like, but not as much as the next entry on the list. And the idea behind this is that you are travelling to this island with a collection of your bandmates to try and understand what's gone on in this island, and I think collect some resources. The story kind of got a bit lost on me. But this game runs in two parallel planes, and in one plane everything has got kind of weird evil zombies and everyone's sacrificing themselves in the village to some deity god. It's all very as you wander around and either do some melee attacks or shoot a gun, and then you can press and hold your gun for a blast radius attack. But the gun takes quite a long time to reload, so you're going to have to do quite a fair bit of dodging around and melee attacks and getting in runs as you go. But the cool thing with this game is that quite often you meet dead ends, and this is where certain pyres stick out of the ground, and when you flick to turn those on, a different world appears of what the island used to be like, but you are limited to the time that you can spend in there because it drains your mental capacity, and if that hits 0 then it starts to affect your physical health. And you're constantly having to start to flick in and out between these two worlds because you gain the ability in the demo to just start flicking and shifting planes. And they call it a rift shift in this game. And you can use that to also stun enemies if they're too big and bulky to kind of get around. So it became quite a cool constant shift back and forth, but making sure that you never spend too long in the parallel world shift in that rift because it will kill you. And so, yeah, this one really intrigued me, played very well, just a little bit dark, and sometimes I would find I was struggling to work out what parts of the environment I could get to and use and what parts I couldn't, because it wasn't very clear what was breakable, and also where some of the higher platforms were going above the lower ones. Were they actually things that I could walk onto, or were they genuinely walled off? It was a bit difficult at times. That's my only critique. Absym, pleasantly surprised. The next game is Drill Rift, and I must admit this didn't click with me at all. You play as a trio of characters, at least in the demo, that all have health but also again mental ability or madness. And the idea is that as you're drilling down to get mithril and metal so that you can then deliver mithril to some big overlord. And again, you've only got a certain amount of days to collect a certain amount of mithril, otherwise it's game over because you won't meet your quota. The deeper you go, the more you start to have to roll dice with a d20 to try and clear different objectives, and choosing which character you take in depending on their stats will then alter what you then get added onto the dice and whether you're successful or failing. You need to constantly find new coal resources, for example, to keep drilling and going deeper and deeper, and the deeper you go, that then starts to unlock power-ups or upgrades for your research tree that you can then spend metal or coal on or mithril to try and upgrade stuff so that you can go faster, repair your objects, and so on and so forth. I just found this game incredibly stop and start and not very clear on what its success criteria was. And that could be just me not understanding it through the reading, but this felt like someone hadn't fully explained the rules of the game, and so it made it a bit too vague for my liking, and it was quite hands-off despite all of those kind of rolling of dices, seeing what initiatives you've got, all of that kind of stuff. It felt too hands-off for me to be fully invested, so I've not put this one on my wish list, but I can totally see why other people might enjoy it. The next one is Arcana Academy, and I think if you enjoy those type of cultist simulator style games where you're busy moving cards around on the screen, this is going to be another one for you. Dive right in. Again, coming back to that, you need to explain to the player, at least to some degree, what you can and can't do. Arcana Academy doesn't do this particularly well up front. And so the idea is that you're trying to build up your academy of magic so that you can then compete and be the best one in the land. And you do this by picking up your characters and placing them into different planes areas or locations, and then putting in crystals to see if you can then get more cards to get more resources, which then might allow you to trigger some spells or a research tree or something like that. But it was really ramshackle how things were explained, and quite often I felt like I was left trying to guess some mechanics, and that was just wasting lots of resources, saying, no, this isn't a thing that you can do, but you've wasted all your resources anyway, and I was getting quite frustrated by it all. So I think a better onboarding experience would make me enjoy Arcana Academy more. I do think, though, that if you come into games like this, because Cultist Simulator was all just, we're not telling you anything, this is going for exactly the same vibe. So if you don't mind that, actually, I think you'll enjoy Arcana Academy, because there's a lot going on that I think will keep you amused and interested, especially because you've got to keep your faculty alive by feeding it, and trying to get some good fruit and trees to make that happen is not always a absolute done deal unless you've got all of your crystal generation and spell generation up and running nicely first and foremost. So yeah, interesting one. Not for me, but I can totally see what it's doing, and I think it would scratch an itch for people that enjoy these types of games. Now, the last two games on these lists were demos that I couldn't actually fully play, but I quite like the look of them. The first one is the U Quiz, and this is for 3 to 8 players online, which is what the demo is, but the full game will have local multiplayer, and that's where I got it a bit wrong. The demo was online only, and because I thought that you could then join into a room through a web browser, through a website, that I'd be able to play this demo, you can't. You have to get 3 people to download separately the Friend Pass edition of U Quiz to get you up and running. The premise of this game, though, is fab. You have someone appointed as the king, and then there are hundreds of questions that you will be asked about, and people have to put in what they think the king's response would be to different types of questions. So it's a bit of a personality quiz. And then the king rates all of the questions to see whether or not you're bang on, they quite like the answer, or you're an idiot, and then you'll move up the steps to slowly take over, and the first one to the top of the stairs wins and then becomes the king for the next round. I thought it was a really cool concept. I just didn't get to play it. And the last demo is Hangtime, and this demo gets stuck on the main menu because the demo updated and it broke the main menu, and everyone's in the Steam forum going, I can't play it. But this looks like a cool 2D volleyball style quappy type game, which looked quite cool. And that's it. I hope that was informative. Let us know down in the comments if any of the games resonated with you. I've added quite a lot to my wish list. It's another expensive one. Wows! You take care. Catch you again soon. Bye.